Live long and prosper.
I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Shut up and take my money.
By Grabthar's hammer, what a saving.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
X never, ever marks the spot.
Winter is coming. You're a wizard, Harry.
Stay a while and listen.
Hey, old Kermit the Frog here.
Bow ties are cool.
So say we all.
This is a Play on Nerds. Welcome to episode 200 of A Play on Nerds. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jarman.
And I'm the other co-host, Steve. And this time, we have a very special episode.
I mean, like we always do, but this is a 200th episode, so we got
I know sometimes I say we lie to you about other episodes, and this is really them. All those other times were lies.
Even though we said they weren't, they are.
I know, and I assured you then, but I assure you now that this is the one you've been waiting for.
So it's actually much harder than you think when you have, if we had a 4-year, I think, anniversary episode, which was fun. We did the first episode, and we listened to the whole way through. But finding something for 200 is difficult when you've already done kind of a special big milestone like that. So what we had for this episode is ChatGPT give us 10 of the most popular geeky fandoms. And for each on that list, we're going to give up points to each one to equal 200 points to honor our 200th episode.
So we will both have 100 points to give out maximum.
And we only get 100 each.
100 each to add up to a maximum of 200.
I have to divide mine in half then.
Well, you better start doing math, buddy.
Oh, God.
And I didn't. You actually already have scores for these things?
I want to make sure I was prepared.
Oh, man. This is going to be great. But before we get to that great episode we just promised you, Jarman, do we have some feedback?
We do. So the lovely, lovely Paul Wright, who's a friend of the show, listened for a long time, and he has several of his own podcasts in the past. But right now you can hear him on the Epsilon 3 podcast, reviewing Babylon 5 episodes, and on the Cosmic Pizza podcast. Check them out. They're great. He says some feedback for our 200th episode, and he says, "Hi, Jarman and Steve. I see that the next episode of A Play on Nerds you record is number 200. What a fabulous achievement that is. I'm so proud to say I've listened to every episode and enjoyed every one of them, including the spin-off series, Muppet Trek, Real Opposition, and even Sappy Crap."
Oh, he remembered Real Opposition exists.
2 episodes. I love Steve's reviews of the films you watch. They have me pissing myself laughing every time I listen to them. Unfortunately, I listen to them in the car whilst driving, which can be rather embarrassing, and I often get strange looks from the other drivers. Radical Recommends has given me some new series and films to watch, and are not things I would normally watch. As for Raul Juliet and Gary Busey, how the hell you guys keep thinking up these things, I'll never know.
I make all of them up on the fly.
On the fly.
On the fly.
They are hilarious and finish off the episode on a high. Well, someone is high anyway, he says. One thing is for sure, and that is I will keep coming back and being your nerdy audience so long as you keep being our nerdy hosts. Do it for as long as you enjoy it, as my Sunday mornings will never be the same without you. Your biggest fan, Paul.
Thank you,
nice.
Paul.
That was just
It's been fun finding the nerd community out here in podcast land and being a part of, you guys are our European listeners.
Yeah, that's right.
I love being able to say, we have a following in Europe. It sounds more impressive when you say Europe. We have a following in Europe.
Hey, they had Brexit for a reason.
That's true. Europe and other.
And other, yes.
Well, thank you so much. We will keep on coming back and being your nerdy co-hosts.
For as long as we enjoy it. Exactly.
And who knows? Maybe we'll do what we did last time. Take like a 3 or 4 year hiatus. Do something else. Come back to it.
We'll probably still be podcasting in some form. But yeah, exactly.
In some form.
But Steve, what have you been up to since our last episode?
Oh, man. The big thing, Dilly had his birthday. We had his birthday party here. We kept it pretty small. My folks, my brother and his wife, their kid. And we had Dilly pick 3 friends. And we did a big splash thing in the backyard because it was hot as hell. Set up a tent thing so the kids could be under the shade. It was a lot of fun. Parents had drinks and food. Real good time. But the bigger thing is we went out to Bauman Camp and we did our first family overnight at camp. And my first time, we'll put camping in quotation marks, since I was like 8 probably.
Oh, yeah.
Realistically. But we went out and some family was supposed to come. They ended up having to change their plans and cancel. So it was just the 4 of us. But the good news is that means that we got the cabin sort of thing that's there.
So we're not outside.
So we got to sleep inside on mats.
Lovely.
Luckily, the day we were there was some sort of cloud cover all day. And so because of that, it took the sting off the sun. We were able to really enjoy ourselves. Had some epic night fires, did a firefly walk because fireflies are here in Pennsylvania right now. And just had a lovely time.
That sounds great. So the weather was nice. You didn't have to sleep outside. That's just perfect.
Yeah, we did. We killed it. We had a real good camp time, which is something I never thought I'd say. What have you been up to?
I quite a bit, I guess. My sister just had her second baby, little baby Wes. So and he had a hell of a time getting here, but he's here and he's getting better by the day, and he's just a big boy, full 8 pounds. So that's really exciting.
Ooh, big boy.
Yeah, and then we had a housewarming party in our house for the first time, having people come over to like really just have people at our house, and we had everything put away finally and decorated, and I grilled burgers outside with the help of a friend. He kind of gave me the 411 on how to do that properly, because I've grilled burgers in the past but never really knew what the hell I was doing. I was just kind of, I'll make sure the right temperature and then we'll eat them.
Yeah, I broke out my burger skills in front of my uncle, and he's like, "You have like a system?" And I was like, "Yeah, you don't? What is wrong with you people?"
I always in the past just made sure they were the right temperature to safely eat, but now I'm like, okay, I want to do this so they actually taste really good and look good. And so they came out really well, and we fed a lot of people. There's like 30 people over here with their kids running around, and it was like we brought a blow up pool in the back, so their kids were so like, there was no water in there, but the kids were still so excited just to have water coming out of the hose splashing on them in this hot weather.
All they need. That's all we had. I went and got a $4 sprinkler from Home Depot, and we dragged out the kiddie pool from last year. That was it. Kids loved it. Went nuts. I think we got out some Tupperware containers at one point, you know?
That's all you need. There you go. Splash it around. And actually, my wife is currently looking for, in like 5 years from now, when we want to move out of Florida, for trying to find places, because that's when, if we have kids, they'll eventually be at the age to go to school. We won't want to be in Florida anymore. She was trying to look up places that have blue states that have good places to live that are still affordable. And she found the cities that were on these lists happen to coincide a bunch, were places that our friends already live, which is pretty exciting. Rochester, which a friend of ours lives, Rick and his wife, Jenny. And then there's Baltimore, where a bunch of our friends have moved to as well. And the word is Pittsburgh. They mentioned it several times.
Dude, come to Pittsburgh, get a cheap ass house in Verona. It's a great school district.
That's that too. School districts, and just like the politics are right, even though it's a purple state. Like that's
purple, but we're in a bluish area.
Yeah, they said Pittsburgh's
a little dicey,
up and coming kind of thing, basically for that politics that wise.
Yeah, a lot of people moved out of New York to Pittsburgh in the pandemic. My brother included in that demographic.
Yeah. So it's exciting in the future. Who knows where I'll end up? We'll see.
Dude, come to Pittsburgh. You could buy a place up the hill from us like right now.
Well, Orlando is a ridiculous market right now. It's terrible. Everything is so expensive.
Dude, come to Pittsburgh. We have history and everything.
That's the update. So I think it takes us to some nerdy news.
Yeah.
It's time for Nerdy News.
All right. This week, the cheeky name for my cheeky story is pocket whales. Well, researchers at Oregon State University have been using drones to do overhead flights and measure the lengths of Pacific Coast gray whales. And they have found an alarming trend over the past 20 to 30 years. The whales on average have shrunk 13% in size. Scientists are theorizing that it's a result of climate change affecting everything from their migration patterns to where they feed to how much they have to feed on. That could be disrupting how they migrate, how they breed, how they meet their mates, everything. And these changes could lead to real health issues other than just being smaller, including reproductive issues, the ability to travel further. It might mean shorter migrations, which means they're going to end up different places and they're not going to find each other for doing baby stuff. It can be bad. But the good news is, if we keep this shit up, we might be able to get them into a swimming pool situation.
That's terrible. A kiddie pool.
So that is pocket whales.
Maybe that's why killer whales have been attacking yachts recently. They're just pissed off. They're getting smaller.
Yeah. They got that short man complex.
Exactly. But I think that takes us to our main segment, 200 Points of Geekdom.
200 Points of Geekdom, where we'll work through a list of, in this case, pop culture fandoms and give them a ranking from 1 to 100 each to come up with a final arbitrary number.
Yes.
Just for the record, our individual numbers will also be arbitrary.
Absolutely.
All right, so Jeremy, this first one's a big bottle to open up right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars.
Yes.
It's expanded multiple decades, multiple mediums, everything from film, TV, books, comic books, children's programming, apps, games, board games, video games, music, bands that do nothing but Star Wars music exist.
Cosplay conventions,
the autographs, the fan-made fiction stuff. That's just incredible, some of it.
Mm-hmm.
The fan-made movies and stuff. What do you think of Star Wars? On like a number sense.
I'm dividing my number in half right now. So this is a pretty high number for the amount of points we have allotted. Mm-hmm. I'm giving this 17.5 points because it was 35.
You were only going to give it 35 out of 100?
Well, yeah, because we have 10 here, and I divide it pretty heavily, but 35 is my highest that I'd given.
Oh, you and I have different ideas of what this bit is, and we're going to discuss it. We're going to discuss it live here on air. So my thought was that we would just give each of these a score of 1 to 100.
Oh, okay, it's much easier.
Yeah. That's why when you were talking about having to divide points and stuff, I was like, man, he's worrying too much about this.
So out of 100 for each one of them. I like that a lot better. Okay.
Yeah, that way we're not restricted. It's just our unbridled opinions.
We're prepared.
We are. Well, we just discussed this concept over chat, and it's different when we're talking.
Oh, much easier. Okay.
So for me, I'm going to give Star Wars some, and then I'll justify it a little bit. I think end score of Star Wars is like 68.
Okay.
And here's why. With the first 3, you got like 92, 94, 91. You're up in there. And then you get the original trilogy, which was like still mid 80s, and then just drifted down from there. So after the first 6 movies, you end up somewhere in the mid 70s. Just like that.
So you weren't just totally disregarding the prequels as crap.
No. Then you have the follow-on movies, which take it down into like, I'm going to say the low 60s, honestly. Rise of Skywalker, those just didn't feel good the way I felt they told the story. So now we're down like the high 50s, low 60s. But then you've got the television stuff, which for me, on the whole, has really redeemed the franchise and brought it out of the depths of like the high 50s, low 60s into the high 60s, maybe low 70s range.
I haven't seen Acolyte yet, but everything else I've been up to date on, and they're all been fantastic.
Acolyte, really enjoyable. Andor was great and helped me not hate Rogue One as much.
Yeah.
Because I hate that movie. But yeah, but because of things like, for me, Rogue One and Solo, it really drug it down a little bit. So
I'm going to go a different route
68.
here. So as far as fandoms go, I'm going more in a route that this is how important this is, I think, to the whole geek universe. And I think Star Wars, for a lot of people, bridges a gap. It did before there was any MCU kind of stuff. This was what made even cool kids in school kind of still like Star Wars. And the nerds like Star Wars for different reasons, for whatever it was. And so it kind of brought people together, and it influenced so much more sci-fi afterwards, and sci-fi fantasy, if you want to call it that. And so I'm giving it probably about an 80, I would say.
Wow, that high.
Because it's of just the importance. It's not my favorite fandom, but I think it's just that important that it kept things going in that direction where it was starting to bridge the divide between the nerds and the jocks and that kind of thing, and bring them together.
All right.
I agree on your pathway of how good stuff was, pretty much.
So that starts out Star Wars out of a possible 200 points at 148.
All right. So you're keeping track of these.
Pretty good. At the end, there will be a winner.
Yes.
All right. Next one. Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to give this one, I'm going to give it a 77.
Wow. Higher than Star Wars.
I think there has been more consistency of product when it comes to Harry Potter, insofar as the movies are all really darn good. Even the one that is considered the worst one is still very good.
Now, are you counting Fantastic Beasts in this?
So then that's where it dips a bit. It would be higher. It would be higher than 77. because the books are also great. A lot of the media that's come out is great. The Broadway show that came out, all the rides, the World's Universal and stuff are all really cool. It's got a dedicated fandom. It would be higher, except the new movies are dragging this shit into the ground, and they got to cut it out. They got to find a new path for this, or they're going to kill it.
They're making a TV series now. They just announced today the showrunner of Succession is going to run the new Harry Potter TV series.
Good.
So
I this would, without those movies, with just the original movies and books and stuff, this would be in the, I'd say the mid to high 80s for me.
So
Pretty
for me, I'm going a little lower because of a couple of factors. One, it was really high because it almost defined a millennial generation, that so much so that Gen Zers joke about how millennials are obsessed with what Harry Potter house they are. Like, it's like a big thing.
That's true.
We all read, so many of us read the books. So many of us saw the movies, and the theme park is awesome. But then you have, of course, the J.K. Rowling of it all, who's kind of run things into the ground a bit for a lot of people and ruined so much for the LGBTQ people who have tattoos of Harry Potter and loved the acceptance that Harry Potter seemed to point out. And she's come out, unfortunately, and doubled down several times as being a not necessarily completely anti-trans, but that they aren't real women necessarily, and that, they shouldn't have the same struggles that women have, and they shouldn't be lumped in with that. And just a lot of controversial stuff, and just double downing on it, and just like kind of souring everything. So, but I can't deny the impact it's had and the quality of the products that have been coming out. So I'm giving it a 60.
Okay.
Yeah, because
that's fair. That's fair.
It made its impact, and I love those movies, and I read all the books, so it's there.
So that means that Harry Potter ends with 137 points.
All right, that's fair.
Okay. Next one, the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Big fandom.
I'm gonna go with this one. I'm gonna put this one at like 82. Feel pretty good about that. Yes, there have been some duds in Marvel, without a doubt, and those lows are pretty darn low. When you look at things like Thor: The Dark World, and even the Marvels, the writing is really rough, and like some lower points, truly lower points.
The Sam Jackson TV series.
I cannot think of another. The Sam L TV series was very bad. You're absolutely right. But I cannot think of another genre or another, universe, creative property, whatever, where there are legitimately 20 of the movies that I like. Yeah. Yes, there are 8 bad ones, but there are 20 of the movies that I like. And I can think of 3 TV shows in the MCU that I would not mind rewatching right now. And I cannot name another thing that has just that quantity of quality.
Yeah. I think for me, it's hard because as a film guy, I do see the point people have brought up with that the MCU kind of like single-handedly screwed up the whole film industry and just like it kind of destroyed any kind of semblance of what was left of non-blockbuster movies existing in theaters. Like they can show correlations, and streaming did this too, coming around the same time as MCU became popular. Streaming became more popular to where like $30 million movies just aren't made anymore, like unless they're for Netflix or something. And it's all has to be huge cinematic blockbusters. And I think they became way too bloated for their own good with the interconnected storylines. Whereas you have something like Harry Potter or Star Wars, it's all kind of like a single line story, and you have some new characters here and there, but it's kind of single line. MCU is just becoming this giant bloated thing that they couldn't wield, and they got way too excited about and made way too much stuff. And so I think there's quality there for sure. And they also did things like crush creative influence of new directors and making new kinds of movies with different feels for them. Like Edgar Wright was going to make Ant-Man so different than everything else, and it was kind of had to be shoved more in this MCU mold. And I get the idea they want to make it all feel the same, but that it just became all same. I don't know.
And I think the nail in the coffin for the MCU, which is why we're not talking about it with more steam right now, was honestly COVID, where there was this sudden need for content. People were doing nothing but consuming content because of lockdown and because of restrictions. That the MCU kicked it into complete overdrive, and we got some total duds in there.
And just like too many stuff.
Too many. I remember there was at one point where one show hadn't ended yet and another show had new episodes start. And I was like, what is happening? How is there not even a week break here?
It was right around time of that, the Egyptian guy. What the hell is his name?
I feel like it was Miss Marvel into Hawkeye.
Yeah.
And they like had 2 weeks where they had episodes on at the same week. I was like, what the hell is happening?
She-Hulk and all that stuff came out at the same time too. And it was like, and they were all good ideas, but they should have been spaced out like much further.
Yeah. I just think about what the MCU could have been if there wasn't that sudden, like, we have to make a million things.
But I mean, I'll never have this experience like it ever again, seeing the Endgame in theaters when Thor comes crashing out of the sky. That might have been Endgame. Might have been the first one. What was the first one called? I can't remember.
Infinity War.
Infinity War, and it's in Wakanda, and he comes out of the sky with the new forged axe, and he's gonna destroy the force. And it's just like they started playing Immigration Song from Led Zeppelin, and I was just like, the whole crowd just erupted cheering, and I'm like, I've never been in a theater with this experience before. This is amazing.
Yeah. Mark Ruffalo in the Hulkbuster suit, he yells, "Oh, you are all so screwed now!"
Exactly.
Such a good moment. You're right.
Like, so I mean, I wanted to give it lower because of the bad effects it's had, but I'm going to give it a 75 probably.
75. Wow.
Because it's had a huge impact. You can't deny across everything, because comics were cool for some people, but now it's like they're just huge.
We have a new leader at 157 points. We have the MCU.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
All right, the next one, Doctor Who.
I just finished watching the newest episodes that are out, so they're pretty damn good.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been going since 1963, I believe, on
right.
and off with different series, and it's got a movie or two in there. And it's just been, if you ask a UK person, they'll have a much different story to tell than us American people will have, and what that means to them. I don't know. What's your experience with it? Because I've seen all of the new Doctor Who.
So my issue with Doctor Who is that I have tried on multiple occasions to get into it, various series, various doctors. And besides Eccleston, who I really did like, but I feel, it was gone too soon from the role, I haven't been able to latch into another doctor. I haven't been able to do it. I even tried with this most recent one. And while the first episode was like enchanting, it was also a little too silly. I don't know if that makes sense.
They're going very fantastical with this one, actually.
Yeah.
Magical stuff is happening, which is very different for Doctor Who.
Yeah, pirate sky goblins or whatever the hell. Just nutty stuff. So because of that, I'm going to give this one pretty low, but it's because I have tried and I have not been able to find whatever it is that other people see in it.
And I don't think it has as much of the worldwide influence that the other things have had. That could be saying that just from an American point of view. But as far as I think anyone who has entertainment getting to them, just because the reach of the MCU or Star Wars, and over this many decades of the international reach it's had, will feel it more. Whereas Doctor Who is more centered around British culture, and then has been imported with the new one. It got more popular here. They even tried to reboot it actually with this new one. They made a whole new IMDb page for the new Doctor. It's like a new series, but even though it is a complete continuation of the other one, and it is very different. But anyways, I totally get what you're saying, because it has influenced quite a bit, but it's so British. It's very centered around British culture. Everyone in the show is British, and every alien planet is British, which I get we do with American people too. So it's kind of the same kind of thing, but it's more isolated, I think, but very more niche than the other ones. I don't know.
But so in order to pander and appease to our UK listeners, because we're huge in Europe and other, I'm going to give this one a 65. I don't want to rate it too low, because I'm with you. I admit the cultural impact of it. I can't deny that, but I have no real connection to it for me.
Yeah, I have more of a connection, and I do see a lot of the cool, positive things it's done. I think it was one of the first shows that I'm aware of that did time travel with blind race casting, where there's might be one word about it the first time Doctor Who goes back in time, and it's Victorian England, and there's people of color walking around a ball in fancy outfits, and they don't explain it. They're just like, whatever, this is just the way it is, because it doesn't really matter for the story. It's just like we'll put Asian and black actors in there just doing the thing, because what does it really matter? We don't have to explain this historically. So it has a lot of things that are really important like that. But yeah, I'll probably give it the same. I'll give it like a 65. That's
okay.
Good.
All right, so 130 points.
It's pretty darn good.
Respectable Doctor Who.
Yeah.
All right, now one that might be divisive. Game of Thrones. So this is another one that I think follows the Star Wars trajectory. This, for, up to a certain point, I could put, for me, at like the 90 range.
The quality.
Read the books, loved the books. Quality of the show was high. Story was good. Where they deviated, it was fine because it made it interesting for me as one of the book readers that I still didn't know everything. The media that's been associated with it, the fandoms, the cosplay that's come out of it, astounding. And then they went and they wrecked those last 3 seasons hard. I've never seen a show take such a turn downward, but at that point it was too big to fail.
Yeah.
If it hadn't already been Game of Thrones size, they would have canceled that shit. It fell off. Viewers fell off at the end. So because of that, then that takes it down. Started so high, the show tanking at the end takes it down to like the 60s range for me, probably. But then you have the new show.
House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon, which I am really supremely enjoying.
Yeah, it's so brutal at times that it actually, even beyond Game of Thrones, Jolie, my wife, just couldn't get into it. And she's like, I get the quality, but she's like, I just can't watch some of this stuff. I'm like, I get it, and there's some really tough, she's like, there's not enough characters to like either. Like, because in the original series, we had the Starks that were all honorable and good people. So you had someone to root for. Even if they had to do some gray area things, you were like, still, they're the heroes, Whereas in House of the Dragon, I like it a lot. I'm watching every episode, but I mean, I get why some people, Jolie generally has to have someone that she can really root for in a show, and it's really kind of hard to root for anybody in House of the Dragon. And I get it.
The thing I'm enjoying about House of the Dragon is that it's so much more subtle than Game of Thrones was. Mm-hmm. Yes, there is hyper gruesome violence, without a doubt, that still exists in this show, but it is used more sparingly. And what feels like as less for shock value. Violence is associated with when big events happen.
Yeah, they're
things that are going to change the realm. Things are going to have lasting repercussions, not just wantonly, with like 1 or 2 exceptions I can think of.
I can see people saying even though first Game of Thrones was so political, you're right, there's more fantastical things happening. Even though there's more dragons in this show, it's more political than Game of Thrones. It's very subtle politics and talking, and there's a lot of names to remember, even more than on Game of Thrones, I feel like.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Especially some of the same names. I'm like, what? So some people, I totally get why it wouldn't be for them, because it feels different than the first Game of Thrones in that way. But
so we ended low at the end of the original Game of Thrones. This is bringing it back up. I'm going to throw it at 74.
One thing I want to mention why I'm going pretty high is because after, I think, Lost, because Lost was the first in a long time, like appointment viewing where everyone was watching Lost. You would talk about it at work. It was right before streaming really hit really big. And so it was like everyone was watching it. Game of Thrones, I think, was the first show since Lost to bring that back on that scale, because we had streaming, but people they were tuning in as soon as it dropped because everyone wanted to see it immediately.
I cannot, that is the only show I've ever gone to like a watching anything for.
Yeah, me too. I watched several
at all.
So I think, I'm giving it, because of that impact, bringing that kind of feel back. What'd you give yours?
A 74.
74. Okay. I'll give mine a 73 because it hasn't had as big of an impact as some of the other things. No, you know what? I'm giving it a 60. Sorry. Because I'm comparing it to other things here. It was important, but I don't think it's as influential as the 70s I've been giving. So I'm giving it a 60. That's what I'm giving it.
And with that, it ends up at 134, only 4 points above Doctor Who. But still 3 points below Harry Potter.
Well, I think that's appropriate for the
That
influence.
feels okay. Yeah, now that I say it out loud, that feels okay. All right. Next up, Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
I'll let you start this one.
Well, I mean, it's been so influential, and it's like, we'll talk about Lord of the Rings later. And Lord of the Rings inspired so much of fantasy. Star Trek took like the very bare bones of sci-fi, like Heinlein and Isaac Asimov, and literally had some of them working on the show back then in the 60s, and made it into mainstream and pushed its way through Westerns that were on TV to make, it's so popular eventually in the 70s when it became more popular because it was canceled early, and then just become the behemoth that it has been. It's had a lot of ups and downs. Yeah. It was gone for a long time, and then it's come back full force now. And I think it still isn't a crossover between nerds and jocks like something like Game of Thrones would be, or even Harry Potter. So I do see it taking some points away because of that, but it's just so enduring, and everyone hears that name, they know what it is, and it's just, I think it's a beautiful piece. Even if people haven't seen it or it's not as popular as the other things, it's so important and it tells such good stories. What about you, Steve? What do you think?
So it's something that I've certainly gained more of an appreciation for as we've gone through Muppet Trek, our other podcast. And I agree. It's sort of that's like an underdog Cinderella story, in that having watched the original series now and all of it, and relatively recently, to think about the world that's been created, the lore that's been created, the Federation being this like understood entity, this idea of all these planets, and the original series was not that in depth.
No,
it was not that well explained. Most things were slapdash and made up and said once with no indication of what the implication would be for the future. And then you're right, it went away and somehow got movies. And then somehow the Next Generation happened, which was a major success, despite having none of the original characters, a major departure from the feel of the original, not trying to recapture, and still being successful. It's like this amazing story that is now this giant tapestry of things that is
books
Star Trek.
And comics and all that, the conventions and everything.
But and talk about like not say the first nerdy fandom, but Trekkies are what made it a thing.
They're what basically made, there's stories behind that actually shows the step-by-step thing that Star Trek conventions were like the first nerd conventions that were of other pop culture things besides comic books, because there were comic book conventions, very small ones, but Star Trek conventions are what made conventions what we see them as today for nerd stuff. Like it started from Star Trek, which is crazy.
So because of that, I'm going to give this one my second highest score of 79 thus far, just under MCU.
I'm going to screw things up, obviously, because I'm giving it 84.
That's fair. No, we both gave it our highest score. There's nothing wrong with
impressive.
that.
All right.
So that means, oh my God.
I'm being very biased with that score, but I would give it higher if it had more cross appeal, which it doesn't have as much cross appeal as some of the other things. But
that is true. It is, I'm not saying niche, because it certainly isn't.
But it's less globally accessible and popular than the other things.
All right, so that brings Star Trek into the front of the pack with 163. All right, Supernatural. I don't think I've ever seen a full episode.
Oh, no.
However, I've seen a lot of stuff on Reddit, stuff that shows up on YouTube, and never once have I said to myself, man, maybe I should check out Supernatural. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Oh my God. I'm surprised it made this list, because it's not the same kind of...
Hey, AI made this list, okay?
I watched all of Supernatural.
I know you have.
And I think for some reason it does capture a lot of people. It's a lot more niche than a lot of things on here. But it went for, I think, 12 seasons. It's like one of the longest running like genre shows out there. And it's just these two brothers fighting demons, and all sorts of crazy hijinks happen where they're, get angels and demons involved and vampires and werewolves. And there's a through line story, but at the same time, it's kind of also monster of the week. And there's people like my ex, Kate, she would read fan fiction. Usually it's sexy fan fiction about the male characters in the show, and she'd never seen the show before. And she would just read them for hours, days on end. And there's huge amounts of fan fiction out there for these characters.
And she was a total winner.
She was a little bit odd. But there's a lot of people out there doing that same thing. There's hundreds of millions of stories people have written about this, and it just captured something. And it's propelled the career of Jensen Ackles, at least, but also the other actors in that show. A lot of them gone on to The Boys and Eric Kripke, who made that show. He's done a lot of their shows. So I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a 55 because it's not as big as the other ones, but has had a big influence. They have their own conventions just for Supernatural still. It's very popular.
Well, talk about screwing up the scale. Supernatural now sits at a 59.
I think that's our lowest at the moment.
I'm going to guess. So the next one is interesting. The Legend of Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this is the one that could go a lot of different ways. So the way I'm choosing to think about it is that some of the most iconic games, Ocarina of Time is on the top 5 games of all time list. Any list that matters, honestly.
Great game.
And any list where it's not in the top 5, I can't trust that list. Is truly it. Some of the most amazing game experiences, both in feeling that you were the hero, going from kid to adult. The themes of good and evil are classic fantasy. The idea of items and collection and moving from place to place revolutionized video games and how video games progress and how we still think of it. Finding the map, finding the key, going through some place, doing one thing and not having the thing we need to get through, and then coming back later. Those are all just classic things that happen in every video game and piece of media that you see now that Zelda made the standard.
And the beautiful, like, just designs of all the creatures and costumes in the game, and the music of the games has become legendary too. Like, it's
very few games that would be considered bad, really.
Yeah,
is what it comes down to. And you add that now to whatever the current game is, Windwalker.
That was an older one.
Whichever one the current game is, where it's like you can construct anything you want. People are doing these crazy hijinks where they connect things to other things and make them blow off just to do crazy ways to get to and from places. The amount of creativity that is opened up now truly has its own new fan base in a world where things like Roblox and Minecraft are taking over.
Yeah.
So because of that, because of the consistent high quality and the lack of duds, I am going to give Legend of... And I might do, there's been talks of movies for years. There's been talks of TV shows for years. Thank God none of them have happened.
There was an animated TV show for a while.
Because that could completely change this. Because they haven't done enough to screw it up yet.
That's true.
So I'm going to give Legend of Zelda a 92.
92? Wow.
The consistency of product, I think, speaks for itself compared to most of these other things where there's been some real low points.
And Nintendo is known for this too. They're very protective of their IP, like from the beginning, and they make sure everything takes a while to make it. So when it comes out, it's not full of bugs, it's not full of crap. Like, they make sure everything's well crafted, and that's something they're well known for. They're not as focused on just perfect graphics. They're focused on like the gameplay being good, the being enjoyable and accessible to all ages. And
they haven't been at the forefront of the tech side of things.
Never tried.
Since the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the last time they were at the absolute forefront of gaming from a tech perspective.
And so, full disclosure, my wife is obsessed with Zelda. She has a whole shrine to Zelda downstairs. We have the Hyrulean Shield full size and 2 Master Swords downstairs right now. One's hanging on the wall. She loves the entire series. We got her a quasi Zelda costume for Christmas. You did, and she wore it ago. That's right. And I've only played the original on NES. I had that one downstairs as well, and I loved it. And then I played Ocarina of Time, but she's played all of them. Man, Ocarina of Time, so good. And so, yeah, I think just the quality, it's not as high up for me just because it's not been something that grabbed me from the get-go. I didn't really understand a lot of the time travel aspects, and you're not the same Link for every game. You're like a reincarnation or something. It's always been very complicated as far as that goes. The multiverse. Yeah, so I'm going to give it a solid... My wife would kill me if I gave it too low, so I'll give it a solid 75. Don't get murdered. Zelda has a global appeal as the others do, but pretty much everybody knows The Legend of Zelda. Okay, Legend of Zelda with that just edged out Star Trek. Oh my 167 God. To 163. Very close. That's all you with that 92, man. I'm telling you, the consistency of product is what I get. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right, now something maybe the other end of the consistency of product, Disney. This could mean a lot of things now because Disney owns everything, but we'll go with what's originally Disney, I guess, and not Star Wars and not
otherwise
Marvel.
we'll go nuts if we try to do that.
Right.
So yeah, Marvel. That being said, I think there is something to be said for Disney making good investments in good IP.
True.
That is its own thing.
That can be part of it, though, that
something they've been doing for a real long time.
Right.
So them as a company, that's something they've done well. But when we think of Disney, we think classic Disney, the Golden Age, Snow White, Cinderella, Aristocats, and then the second Gold Age where you get Lion King,
Little Mermaid,
and Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin in there, just gem after gem after gem for a while there. But you have to add in the weird stuff, the weird live action stuff they did all through the 60s and 70s that a lot of people kind of forget about. There are a few enchanting things in there like Pete's Dragon, but there's also things in there like The Black Hole. So that being said, they're the undisputed masters of children's media.
Yeah.
Like no one's done it like them to the extent that they have done it. And the fact that Mickey Mouse is recognized more places than pictures of Jesus says something.
It does.
It just does. So because of that, I'm going to rate Disney pretty high, but because of the weird quality and there's a lot to take in, not too high. So I'm going to give them a solid, like a 70. 70 feels good for Disney.
Yeah, I kind of go the same route. There's just so much there. It's just such a behemoth, so much entertainment over the years, good and bad, and the theme parks. But I will undercut that with some of their, darker corporate side, which has gotten kind of cutthroat and weird several times in history, and not paying people fair wages. And they have that much responsibility compared to these other fandoms where it's like they actually own all these businesses outside of just making entertainment. And so it makes it a little weird. And so I'm going to give them a 65. Plus, I don't have kids yet.
That feels good.
Yeah.
So that takes them at 135.
The only thing under like 50 has been Supernatural.
That puts them 5 points ahead of Doctor Who.
Oh, well, that's fair.
And only 1 point ahead of Game of Thrones. All right. So now we're now at the final one.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord of the Rings.
Oof.
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, boom, boom. The fact that we remember those songs already speaks volumes for what we're about to talk about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this guy, Tolkien, as some people say, because they try to be pretentious, he's influenced so much without him even really trying. This guy was a freaking linguist and just wanted to make...
Like orcs.
Yeah.
Orcs wouldn't exist.
Without Tolkien.
Something would exist, but they wouldn't be orcs.
But he's known to influence. He made Dungeons and Dragons is what it is because of him. Furthering the storyline of the reluctant hero, just basically undercutting this fantasy genre in general. The entire
feudal fantasy genre.
Yeah, it just wouldn't really exist in the same way without this. And not only that, then you add on top of it Peter Jackson's movies, which were just incredible depictions of
just incredible
of those books.
Some of them, not the Hobbit ones, but the first three.
Yeah, I still haven't even seen all the Hobbit movies.
They're real bad, dude. The only good thing is the third one has a big war in it between a bunch of cool races. There's like dwarves fighting elves, fighting orcs and stuff. So that's at least fun to watch, but otherwise not really redeemable.
But he made those movies, the first three, look exactly how I felt they were going to look when I read the books as a kid. And it was just like, oh, this is exactly what I was picturing in my head.
Nailed it.
Yeah. And so could have been done better. A lot of good video games out there too that people have loved over the years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, not a lot of duds as far as this goes, except for
Shadow of Mordor is still one of my favorite games.
Oh yeah, I played that one. And even the Ralph Bakshi films, they're the animated ones that people loved those in the 70s.
Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom.
That's your next karaoke song. Everyone's like, what the hell is this guy singing?
And then we'll get up and sing Bilbo Baggins.
In the middle of the earth, in the land, of the Shire,
lived a brave little hobbit who we all admire.
So, yeah, what are you going to give this one, Steve?
So the elephant in the room we have to talk about, though, in all of this is the new Amazon series.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, Rings of Power, which season 1 was not a giant fan of.
Season 1 I felt like had not found its footing yet, for sure.
No.
I thought there was some cool stuff in there, but I'm like,
spoilers. The fact that they involved Gandalf when there was no sensible reason for him to be there.
Still haven't said he's Gandalf, but come on.
He's definitely Gandalf, by the way. Anyone who says he's not is in denial. They literally spelled out that he was Gandalf.
What sucks about all of this, though, is that some weird ass company had the rights to Lord of the Rings IP, and then they started making this show. But some of the properties and some of the the storylines were still owned just by the estate of Tolkien. Yeah. So they could only tell some stories in a certain way and not mention some characters. So the show was just
they can make reference to things if they were referenced in this book or named in this book, but if they weren't named in this book, even if they're referenced, they can't name them that thing.
And then in the middle of this show, that weird ass company sold the IP to another weird ass company I never heard of before. And so I don't know why some giant company hasn't bought this up and kind of streamlined everything. So this show, I'm kind of like giving it an excuse to be like whatever the hell it is, because it's just kind of in this weird limbo state of what it can cover. And I'm not really faulting it too much for being crappy, but they probably shouldn't have made it just yet. They should have waited for things kind of settle down.
Or they should have picked a smaller story to tell.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's the other thing. They picked a huge, expansive story with massive implications.
When they can't use all the characters.
For the world we know exists.
They can't talk about all the storylines. Like, it's just weird.
So Rings of Power does bring it down. I'm not going to lie. Otherwise, I think I could say Lord of the Rings would finish in the top here. Maybe even above Legend of Zelda as far as quality of product and enjoying the books, all their forms of media. But because of this, Lord of the Rings is going to eke it out at about a 76.
Oof. All right. I will say, even though I love my Star Trek, I will never have the same feeling of reading the Lord of the Rings books as a kid.
Ooh, okay.
And knowing all the things it's influenced, all the characters and the movies and books that it has produced because of it, from other authors and other stories, I will give this a 97.
97. God damn. I've had that was your talked down number too.
Yeah. Those 3 points are just for the questionable Rings of Power that I'm letting off the hook.
So with that, definitively Lord of the Rings is going to finish at the number 1 spot with 173 points.
Oh, all right.
Which I'm not mad about.
Yeah.
In second place, we've got The Legend of Zelda with 167.
Impressive.
Star Trek in third with 163, and the MCU in fourth with 157.
Nice.
And at the bottom, we have Supernatural, which I may have been too hard on.
4.
with a 59. But on a more serious note, we have on the other end Doctor Who at 130, Harry Potter at 137, and then Star Wars at 148.
There you go. I think that's fair for the general populace and for just our personal, what we like about things.
Absolutely. And we're right. So that's the important part.
And we're right. Yeah, it's our show.
Well, that's been our special 200-point giveaway episode where everything's arbitrary. Just like this whole 200 episodes, it's all arbitrary, folks.
Nothing's definitive. We have no authority, and we hope you still enjoy it.
Yeah, we're just two white guys who found microphones and did the next natural thing.
And to be fair, we started doing this right before all the other white guys joined in to do the same thing. So we were there a little bit before.
We were on the early end. But not even really. No. We weren't pioneers, certainly.
No, not at all.
No, not even a little. Well, I think that takes us through to the old and steady radical recommend.
That's right.
I recommend.
If you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up.
What do you recommend I do?
I recommend Pleasant.
All right. This week, I've got a radical recommend, something that I just had the genuinely delight in experiencing when I went camping.
Mm-hmm.
So a big part of going camping is making a fire, being able to cook some hot dogs. We made camp pies and s'mores. It was all very, very good. But getting that fire started can be a little bit troublesome. I've seen everything from cotton that you soak in wax, different tree barks that you shred up, and all these different things are the best fire starter. Well, I got the real one. Dorito chips. I saw it in a YouTube video, thought it was bullshit, but we took a bag with us because we had the kids with us and they were going to eat them. So sure enough, lit one. They do take a little bit to light, maybe 10 to 15 seconds to light, but once they light, a Dorito chip will burn for 45 seconds to maybe a minute and a half continuously. Oh, they burn from one end to the other like a candle because of the dried out plant matter and then the residual oil on the chip.
So not even the dust. That has nothing to do with it.
No, I think you could do it with regular tortilla chips.
Oh, wow. All
pretty
right.
easily. I have never had such an easy time starting a fire ever before than with a Dorito chip.
That is hilarious.
So that is my radical recommend. You ever need to start a fire? Take a bag of Doritos. I'm not kidding.
And bring some extras so you can eat them.
Light them with a lighter and throw that shit under a little bit of twigs and you'd be amazed. You'll be amazed.
I wonder how it smells, though. Does it smell nice or just...
It didn't. It smelled like... Well, we're already burning twigs and shit, so you don't really smell it, you know?
It smells like burnt Doritos in here.
Just charred cheese.
Well, next time I go camping, which will be probably not for a very long time, I'll use
at some point, you and Jolie will come here, and we will take you to Bauman Camp.
I like that.
Which is just beautiful. Access to a creek, access to a little tiny stream, shade, a little bit of amenities. It's beautiful.
I saw the area before it was developed, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to some trailer reviews. All right, so this week in trailer reviews, we're covering the remake of Nosferatu.
Which I just want to note, I love has Willem Dafoe in it from Shadow of the Vampire. Like, that's just...
Yeah.
It was the beautiful, perfect opening poetic kiss to this trailer.
Those who don't know, Shadow of the Vampire was a movie probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, maybe.
That sounds right.
About the making of the original Nosferatu from the silent film era, where Willem Dafoe played Max Schreck, the actor who was supposed to be Nosferatu, but the concept of that movie was that Max Schreck was an actual vampire, and they didn't know that when they were filming the movie, and it was a fun movie. But
the fact that he's there is great. I liked that there were good, like even in the trailer, good creepy shots and clever camera work that sort of immediately proved to me this was going to be more than just a rehash.
Yeah, and not just a cheap remake; it's a really artful remake of that. And this guy has made a few movies that have all been beautiful. I forgot his name now, but he's done a few movies that are just beautiful movies.
I'm already picking up like Bram Stoker's Dracula vibes though, which makes me a little nervous. You got a young guy with dark hair, looks kind of like Keanu Reeves, and a young dark-haired woman who like clearly is obsessed with Nosferatu and somehow under his enchantment. You know, like...
Well, the original had that aspect, at least, of the young woman who was being enchanted by him.
But it's just one of those things where Dracula at this point has been done to death.
Right.
So yes, Nosferatu has its place in history. However, Dracula is what people are going to think of when they see a vampire film. So I think you'd want to steer...
And I can't remember because I saw
the ship away a little bit.
I haven't watched the original silent film since film school a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure, though, it was just kind of a slightly different retelling of Bram Stoker's Dracula, the original, because that was made in the 1800s, and this was made in the 1920s, and so it was like it had a similar story, but they had to make it their own a little bit, because I think it was still within the time of not public domain at that point, his book, so because it was so soon after that, but it had its own name, and it was a German film. But yeah, so it will have similarities, but hopefully, they make it different enough where it just doesn't feel like another Dracula movie. But
right, that's my fear at this point. That being said, this looks more artful. It looks serious. The tone looks good. It's got decent enough actors in it. Willem Dafoe's going to carry this shit.
Emily Depp is Johnny Depp's daughter. She's playing the lead.
She's okay in things.
Yeah, so far.
You got the guy who played Beast in there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that guy. So you got some guys.
Wasn't he just Renfield in that Nick Cage movie?
He was. He was, in fact, in that.
I was like, he just wasn't a Dracula movie.
So I'm going to give this one. I like this stream I've been on where Raul Julia comes home from work after a long day, pulls in his Buick, turns off the keys, takes a big deep breath before going inside. All the lights are out, which is weird because Gary should be playing with his train set right now. He opens the door. It's dark. He flips on the switch and all the light bulbs have been taken out. He goes, God damn it, Gary. And wanders into the kitchen and opens the fridge, and even the light bulb in the fridge is out. He hears a pitter patter of footsteps, a little chittering of teeth behind him, and he turns and it's gone before he looks. He's like, Gary, it's been a really long day. Please do not try to bite me. And Gary from under the kitchen table slides out and goes, okay, Raw. I'm sorry. and drifts back under the table in a sliding motion that you can't explain.
I'm going to give this a rating of a film that was produced in this alternate universe where Raul Julia and Gary Busey are in this world, and they basically make a movie with Gary Busey playing a vampire, not realizing that Gary Busey this whole time has actually been a vampire because look at the teeth, look at his personality. That explains a lot.
You know how I survived that car crash? Human blood.
He thinks he's a vampire, but he's insane.
Right. Now I just drink it because I like the taste.
We give him jam and mix it with water. It's not blood. Oh, but that brings us to the end of the episode. Please join us next time for what, Steve?
That's right. Next time for episode 201 in honor of the most anticipated movie of the summer, Deadpool and Wolverine. We're going to be talking about two other characters from different worlds slammed together in a search for justice and to make things right. Of course, we're talking about Cop and a Half with Burt Reynolds.
You have to know, folks, that Steve's been wanting to watch this movie for the podcast for years, apparently.
But I didn't want to jam it in. I wanted it to feel right, and this feels right. So we're going to be watching Cop and a Half, Burt Reynolds, in honor of Deadpool and Wolverine. All of that and more next time. Come on back for, let's say, another 200 episodes.
Yeah.
And be our nerdy audience. We will keep on coming back for another 200 episodes and being your nerdy co-host. Thanks again, Internet.
Stay nerdy, my friends. See you in 10 years.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to A Play on Nerds. Feel free to email feedback at aplayonnerds.com with all your questions or comments.
Shoot us a message on Facebook or Twitter and earn yourself a sweet shout out on the show.
Review us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts so even more nerds can find us. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, we aren't picky.
Check out our entire back catalog and other offerings at aplayonnerds.com.
And how?